Welcome to the BTU Geçerken account, Culture Mockumentaries. Hello, my friends. Today I talk about humanism, one of the most important movements in history. Humanism began in the Renaissance around the 14th and 15th centuries, when people started to focus more on human values, art, and science. It placed people at the center of thought, believing that humans have dignity, reason, and the ability to shape their own destiny. Thinkers like Petrarch and Erasmus studied classical texts from Greece and Rome, bringing back the wisdom of the past. Artists such as Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo showed the beauty of the human body and mind. Writers and scholars promoted the idea that knowledge should serve humanity, not only religion or rulers. I learned that humanism changed Europe forever. It opened the way for modern science, literature, and philosophy. It gave people confidence in their own abilities and inspired progress in many fields. Walking through history, I feel admiration for this movement. Humanism connects the past with the present. It shows that people can create, discover, and improve the world. For me, humanism is unforgettable. It is a symbol of human strength, creativity, and hope. This was humanism, a movement that placed people at the center of thought and culture. Now I move to the next movement, which is nationalism. Nationalism is one of the most powerful ideas in modern history. It is the belief that people who share the same language, culture, and history should unite under one nation. Nationalism became strong in the 19th century, especially in Europe. It helped create modern states like Germany and Italy, where people wanted unity and independence. Nationalism gave people pride in their identity, their traditions, and their homeland. I learned that nationalism was not only about unity, but also about power. It inspired revolutions, independence movements, and the creation of new countries. At the same time, it sometimes caused conflicts and wars because nations competed with each other. Walking through history, I see how nationalism shaped the world. It gave people a sense of belonging and purpose. Flags, anthems, and national heroes became symbols of unity. But it also showed the danger of dividing people by borders and differences. For me, studying nationalism is unforgettable. It connects the past with the present. Even today, nationalism is strong in many countries. It shows the deep love people have for their nation, but it also reminds us to balance pride with peace and respect for others. This was nationalism. Now I move to the next movement, which is socialism. This was nationalism, a movement that united people under one nation but also caused conflicts. Now I move to the next movement, which is socialism. Socialism is one of the most influential ideas of the modern age. It believes in equality, fairness, and shared resources. The movement grew strong during the Industrial Revolution, when workers faced long hours, low wages, and poor conditions. People wanted justice, and they looked for a system that protected them. Thinkers like Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels argued that society should not be divided between rich and poor. They believed that production should serve everyone, not only a few owners. Their ideas inspired workers' movements, unions, and revolutions across the world. I learned that socialism was not only about economics, but also about dignity. It gave workers hope that they could change their lives. It created new laws for labor rights, education, and healthcare. At the same time, socialism faced challenges because different countries applied it in different ways. Walking through history, I see how socialism shaped the 20th century. It influenced politics, revolutions, and even daily life. It showed the power of ordinary people when they stand together. For me, studying socialism is unforgettable. It connects the struggle of workers with the dream of equality. It reminds us that society must balance freedom with fairness. This was socialism. Now I move to the next movement, which is capitalism. This was socialism, a movement that believed in equality and shared resources. Now I move to the next movement, which is capitalism. Capitalism is one of the most influential systems in the modern world. It is based on free markets, private property, and competition. The idea is that individuals and businesses can own resources, produce goods, and sell them for profit. Capitalism encourages innovation and growth. Thinkers like Adam Smith argued that when people pursue their own interests, society benefits as a whole. This idea became known as the invisible hand of the market. Over time, capitalism helped create industries, technologies, and global trade. I learned that capitalism also has challenges. It creates wealth and opportunities, but it can also lead to inequality. Some people become very rich, while others struggle to survive. Critics argue that capitalism must be balanced with fairness and social responsibility. Walking through history, I see how capitalism shaped the modern economy. It influenced revolutions in industry, finance, and technology. It connected countries through trade and made globalization possible. For me, studying capitalism is unforgettable. It shows the power of human creativity and ambition, but it also reminds us of the need for justice. Capitalism is a system that continues to shape our lives every day. This was capitalism. Now I move to the next movement, which is liberalism. This was capitalism, a system of free markets and private property that encouraged innovation but also created inequality. Now I move to the next movement, which is liberalism. Liberalism is one of the most important ideas in modern political thought. It values freedom, democracy, and individual rights. The movement began in Europe during the Enlightenment, when thinkers like John Locke argued that people have natural rights to life, liberty, and property. Liberalism believes that governments should protect these rights, not take them away. It supports constitutions, parliaments, and laws that limit the power of rulers. Over time, liberalism inspired revolutions, such as the American Revolution and the French Revolution, where people demanded freedom and equality. I learned that liberalism is not only about politics, but also about society. It defends personal choices, free speech, and religious tolerance. It encourages education and progress, believing that individuals can improve themselves and their communities. Walking through history, I see how liberalism shaped modern democracies. It created systems where citizens have a voice, where laws protect rights, and where governments are accountable. At the same time, liberalism faced challenges because freedom must always be balanced with responsibility. For me, studying liberalism is unforgettable. It connects the past with the present, showing how ideas of freedom and rights continue to inspire people today. Liberalism is a symbol of human dignity, progress, and hope for a better future. This was liberalism. Now I move to the next movement, which is conservatism. This was liberalism, a movement that valued freedom, democracy, and individual rights. Now I move to the next movement, which is conservatism. Conservatism is one of the most enduring ideas in political thought. It values tradition, stability, and continuity. The movement began as a reaction to revolutions and rapid changes in society. Thinkers like Edmund Burke argued that sudden change could be dangerous and that society should evolve slowly, respecting culture and heritage. Conservatism believes that traditions carry wisdom from the past. It emphasizes family, religion, and community as the foundations of social life. It resists radical reforms, preferring gradual improvements that protect stability. I learned that conservatism was not only about politics, but also about identity. It gave people a sense of belonging to their history and culture. It reminded societies that progress must be balanced with respect for what already exists. Walking through history, I see how conservatism shaped governments and communities. It influenced laws, institutions, and education. At the same time, it faced challenges because too much resistance to change can slow down progress. For me, studying conservatism is unforgettable. It connects the past with the present, showing how traditions guide societies through time. Conservatism is a symbol of stability, respect, and continuity. This was conservatism. Now I move to the next movement, which is feminism. This was conservatism, a movement that valued tradition, stability, and continuity. Now I move to the next movement, which is feminism. Feminism is one of the most important social movements in modern history. It fights for women's rights and equality. The first wave of feminism began in the 19th century, when women demanded the right to vote and to participate in public life. Leaders like Emmeline Pankhurst in Britain and Susan B. Anthony in the United States became symbols of this struggle. Later, the second wave of feminism in the 20th century focused on workplace equality, education, and reproductive rights. Women wanted equal opportunities in jobs, schools, and politics. They argued that society must change to respect women's voices and choices. I learned that feminism is not only about women, but about justice for everyone. It challenges discrimination and asks for equality in all areas of life. It has many waves and forms, but the goal is always fairness and respect. Walking through history, I see how feminism changed laws, cultures, and families. It gave women the right to vote, to study, to work, and to lead. At the same time, it continues today because equality is not yet complete. For me, studying feminism is unforgettable. It connects the past with the present, showing how courage and determination can change society. Feminism is a symbol of justice, equality, and hope for a better future. This was feminism. Now I move to the next movement, which is environmentalism. This was feminism, a movement that fought for women's rights and equality. Now I move to the next movement, which is environmentalism. Environmentalism is one of the most important movements of the modern world. It focuses on protecting nature, the planet, and the balance of life. The movement grew strong in the 20th century when people saw the dangers of pollution, deforestation, and climate change. Environmentalism believes that humans must live in harmony with the earth. It calls for clean air, clean water, and the preservation of forests, oceans, and wildlife. Activists and scientists warned that if we do not care for the planet, future generations will suffer. I learned that environmentalism is not only about nature, but also about responsibility. It asks governments, companies, and individuals to act wisely. Recycling, renewable energy, and sustainable living became symbols of this movement. Walking through history, I see how environmentalism shaped laws, education, and culture. It created organizations, protests, and international agreements to protect the environment. At the same time, it continues today because the challenges of climate change are still very strong. For me, studying environmentalism is unforgettable. It connects the past with the present, showing how human progress must respect the earth. Environmentalism is a symbol of care, balance, and hope for the future. This was environmentalism. Now I move to the next movement, which is communism. This was environmentalism, a movement that protected nature and called for balance between human progress and the earth. Now I move to the next movement, which is communism. Communism is one of the most debated ideologies in modern history. It seeks a classless society where all property and resources are shared. The idea was inspired by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, who argued that workers were exploited under capitalism and that society should be organized for equality. Communism believes that production should serve everyone, not just the wealthy. It calls for the abolition of private ownership and the creation of a system where people work together for the common good. The movement promised fairness, dignity, and unity. I learned that communism shaped the 20th century in powerful ways. It inspired revolutions in Russia, China, and other countries. It created new governments and economies, but it also faced challenges because practice was often different from theory. Some nations struggled with freedom, efficiency, and human rights under communist rule. Walking through history, I see how communism influenced politics, culture, and daily life. It gave hope to millions of workers, but it also caused conflicts and divisions across the world. For me, studying communism is unforgettable. It connects the dream of equality with the reality of struggle. Communism is a symbol of ambition, revolution, and the search for justice. This was communism. Now I move to the next movement, which is imperialism. This was communism, a movement that dreamed of a classless society but faced many challenges in practice. Now I move to the next movement, which is imperialism. Imperialism is one of the most powerful forces in world history. It is the idea of expanding power and control over other lands. Empires used military strength, trade, and colonization to dominate territories far from their own. Imperialism shaped the modern world. European powers like Britain, France, and Spain built vast empires across Asia, Africa, and the Americas. They brought their language, culture, and religion, but they also exploited resources and people. Colonized nations often suffered under foreign rule, losing independence and identity. I learned that imperialism was not only about politics, but also about economics. It created global trade networks, new industries, and wealth for empires. At the same time, it caused inequality, conflict, and resistance. Many independence movements in the 20th century were born as a reaction against imperialism. Walking through history, I see how imperialism influenced culture, borders, and nations. It connected distant lands, but it also divided people. Its legacy is still visible today in languages, traditions, and global relations. For me, studying imperialism is unforgettable. It shows both the ambition and the consequences of human power. Imperialism is a symbol of expansion, domination, and the struggle for freedom. This was imperialism. Now I move to the next movement, which is existentialism. This was imperialism, a movement that expanded power over other lands and shaped the modern world. Now I move to the next movement, which is existentialism. Existentialism is one of the most fascinating philosophies of the 20th century. It asks deep questions about meaning, freedom, and responsibility. Thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus argued that life has no fixed purpose and that humans must create their own meaning through choices and actions. Existentialism believes that freedom is both a gift and a burden. People are free to decide, but they must also accept the consequences of their decisions. It teaches that we cannot escape responsibility, even when life feels uncertain or absurd. I learned that existentialism was not only about philosophy, but also about literature and art. Writers like Dostoevsky and Kafka explored themes of isolation, choice, and struggle. Their work showed how individuals face the challenges of existence in a complex world. Walking through history, I see how existentialism influenced culture, politics, and psychology. It gave people courage to face life honestly, without illusions. It reminded societies that meaning is not given, but created. For me, studying existentialism is unforgettable. It connects the human search for purpose with the reality of freedom. Existentialism is a symbol of choice, responsibility, and the courage to live authentically. This was existentialism. Now I move to the next movement, which is modernism. This was existentialism, a philosophy that asked about meaning, freedom, and responsibility. Now I move to the next movement, which is modernism. Modernism is one of the most creative and revolutionary movements in art, literature, and culture. It began in the late 19th and early 20th centuries when people wanted to break away from traditions and create something new. Modernism values innovation, progress, and originality. Artists like Pablo Picasso and writers like James Joyce challenged old rules and experimented with new styles. They believed that art and literature should reflect the modern world, with its speed, technology, and complexity. I learned that modernism was not only about art, but also about society. It reflected the changes of industrialization, urban life, and global conflict. It showed how people were searching for new ways to understand themselves and their world. Walking through history, I see how modernism shaped culture. It created bold paintings, experimental novels, and new forms of architecture. It gave people freedom to imagine and to express ideas in ways never seen before. For me, studying modernism is unforgettable. It connects creativity with courage, showing how people dared to break traditions and build new visions. Modernism is a symbol of change, originality, and the spirit of progress. This was modernism. Now I move to the next movement, which is postmodernism. This was modernism, a movement that broke traditions and created bold new visions in art, literature, and culture. Now I move to the next movement, which is postmodernism. Postmodernism is one of the most complex and playful movements of the late 20th century. It challenges the idea of absolute truth and questions grand narratives. Postmodern thinkers and artists believe that reality is shaped by perspective, language, and culture. Postmodernism values diversity, irony, and experimentation. Writers like Thomas Pynchon and artists like Andy Warhol used humor, parody, and mixed styles to show that meaning is never fixed. Architecture also reflected this movement, combining old and new designs in surprising ways. I learned that postmodernism was not only about art, but also about society. It reflected a world of media, technology, and globalization, where people experienced many different realities at once. It taught that identity and culture are flexible, and that no single story can explain everything. Walking through history, I see how postmodernism shaped literature, film, and philosophy. It gave people freedom to question authority, to play with ideas, and to embrace contradictions. At the same time, it faced criticism, because too much doubt can make it hard to find common values. For me, studying postmodernism is unforgettable. It connects creativity with skepticism, showing how people can explore meaning in endless ways. Postmodernism is a symbol of diversity, irony, and the courage to question. This was postmodernism. Now I move to the next movement, which is Romanticism, where I will also share my closing words. This was postmodernism, a movement that questioned grand narratives and embraced diversity and irony. Now I move to the next movement, which is Romanticism. Romanticism is one of the most emotional and imaginative movements in history. It began in the late 18th and early 19th centuries as a reaction against rationalism and industrialization. Romantic thinkers and artists believed in the power of feelings, nature, and creativity. Romanticism values imagination, passion, and individuality. Writers like William Wordsworth and poets like Lord Byron celebrated the beauty of nature and the depth of human emotion. Painters such as Caspar David Friedrich showed landscapes filled with mystery and spirit. I learned that Romanticism was not only about art, but also about life. It encouraged people to listen to their hearts, to dream, and to see the world as full of wonder. It gave voice to freedom, love, and the search for meaning beyond reason. Walking through history, I see how Romanticism shaped literature, music, and philosophy. It inspired revolutions, national pride, and artistic masterpieces. At the same time, it reminded societies that progress must not silence the human soul. For me, studying Romanticism is unforgettable. It connects emotion with imagination, showing how people can find beauty and meaning in life. Romanticism is a symbol of passion, creativity, and hope. This was Romanticism. And with it, I close the BTU Geçerken account Culture Mockumentaries. Thank you, my friends, for joining me on this journey through history. Together, we explored movements that shaped our world, from humanism to Romanticism. I hope these stories inspire you to learn, to reflect, and to dream.